My name is Christopher Hamilton, and I'm 67. I'm a leather shoe repair specialist and the owner of a shoe store. There is a sound you never forget when you've spent your life repairing what others have given up on. Leather resisting, then surrendering. I was the last sound I heard the night everything changed. I locked the front door of the shop at exactly 7:12 p.m., like I had done for 38 years. Habit isn't routine, it's survival. Every detail matters when your life is built on precision. The street outside had gone quiet. Inside, the air still held the scent of polish, glue, and time. And then, "Mr. Hamilton?" It was Helen's voice, the cleaning lady at my shoe repair shop and store. Too soft, too careful. I turned slowly. "You're still here?" She stood near the back hallway, fingers gripping her cleaning cloth like it was something she might need to defend herself with. "Follow me, hurry up," she said. "Now." Something in my chest tightened, not fear, recognition. I followed her. Every step felt measured, prepared. The office door was half open, a sliver of light and movement. Dorothy, my daughter-in-law, standing at my desk. She didn't hear me, not at first. Her hands moved quickly, efficiently through my files, not searching blindly, no hesitation, no wasted motion. That was the first thing that told me everything. She knew exactly what she was looking for. I leaned against the doorframe. "Find something interesting?" She froze, slowly turned, and then she smiled, warm, polished, practiced. "Oh, Christopher," she said lightly, closing the drawer with deliberate calm. "I was just looking for Thomas's warranty receipt. He said it might be here." A lie. Too smooth, too ready. "Did you check the front counter?" I asked. Her eyes flickered just for a second. "No, I thought this would be quicker." Of course she did. We stood there, two people, one truth hanging between us like a blade neither of us had touched yet. Helen shifted behind me. I could feel her unease like a draft through a cracked window. Dorothy stepped past me, heels clicking softly against the floor. "Good night, Christopher," she said, pausing just long enough to meet my eyes. And in that second, the smile dropped. Not completely, just enough. That was when I knew. She wasn't careless. She was confident. The door closed behind her. Silence rushed in. "Mr. Hamilton," Helen whispered. "That wasn't right." "No," I said. "It wasn't." That night, I didn't go home. I sat in the back room staring at the shelf above my bench, at Shannon's boots, black leather, untouched for 8 years, waiting. My hands trembled when I reached for them, not from age, from memory. "You always said I'd know when the time came," I whispered into the empty room. The silence answered me. And then I turned the heel, felt the hidden seam beneath my fingers, a secret I had buried 40 years ago. And suddenly I understood something that made my chest tighten like a vice. Shannon hadn't left me those boots to remember her. She had left them to protect me. If you've ever ignored a warning until it was almost too late, you already know what comes next. And immediately memories of our first meeting with Dorothy flooded back, moments I hadn't paid much attention to at the time. Some smiles don't welcome you, they assess you. I should have understood that the moment Dorothy stepped into my shop. "Christopher Hamilton?" she said, extending both hands as if we were already family. "I've heard so much about you." Her voice was warm. Her eyes were not. They moved. Shelves, counters, floor space, the back room. Calculating. I shook her hand anyway. "I hope only the good parts." She smiled wider. "Of course. But she didn't look at me when she said it. She looked past me at the workshop door. Thomas stood beside her, proud, nervous. "Dad, isn't she amazing?" I looked at my son, then at her. "I'm sure she is." That was the first lie I told myself. The wedding came fast, too fast. Joy has a way of blinding you when you want it to be real. Thomas cried when he saw her walk down the aisle. I hadn't seen him cry since his mother, my wife Shannon, passed away. That should have meant something sacred. Instead, it felt like something slipping through my hands. 5 months. That's how long it took for the questions to begin. Casual, polite, precise. "Have you ever thought about retiring, Christopher?"
We were sitting at my kitchen table. She stirred her tea slowly, watching me over the rim of the cup. "I haven't had a reason to," I said. She tilted her head. "But the property alone, it must be worth quite a bit." There it was. Not curiosity, valuation. Thomas shifted in his chair. "Dorothy just means you deserve to rest, Dad." "Do I?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. She did. "You've built something wonderful," she said smoothly. "It would be a shame not to maximize it." Maximize. Not preserve, not pass down. Maximize. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into the shop at 2 a.m. and stood in the dark, listening to nothing, because something had changed and I could feel it. First, their usual Saturday visits to my place stopped. "Busy this week, Dad." Then, "Maybe next time." Then, silence. Weeks later, I asked him directly, "You don't come by anymore." Thomas avoided my eyes. "We're just trying to build our life together." We, not us. I realized that Dorothy was keeping my son away from me. And then Helen came to me again. "She was here yesterday," she said, voice tight. "You weren't." My chest went still. How long? 12 minutes. 12 minutes is not a visit, it's a search. "What did she do?" Helen hesitated. "She went straight to your office." That was the moment everything aligned. The smile, the questions, the distance. I nodded slowly. "Thank you, Helen." That night, I sat in the dark again, but this time I wasn't confused. I was certain. Some people don't break into your life. They ease in politely, ask the right questions, wait for you to trust them, and then they start to act swiftly. If you've ever felt someone quietly pulling your world apart while smiling to your face, you already know why I couldn't ignore this any longer. There are moments in life when the past doesn't stay behind you. It reaches forward and saves you. I took Shannon's boots off the shelf, the ones I'd put there 8 years ago, right after she died. Those boots were dear to both of us. I'd made them for her 40 years ago as a token of my boundless love. I turned them over in my hands, and what a surprise it was when the heel opened with a sound I felt more than heard. A soft click, precise, intentional. My hands froze, because suddenly I wasn't standing in my workshop anymore. I was standing 40 years ago, watching Shannon laugh as she tried on the boots I made for her. "You hid something in these, didn't you?" she teased back then. I smiled. "Maybe." She looked at me longer than she should have. "You always do." I had forgotten that moment. She hadn't. Inside the heel was a folded square, sealed carefully against time. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Not from age, from knowing. "Christopher," I whispered, hearing her voice before I even read the first word. "If you are reading this, something is already wrong." The room seemed to tilt. I sat down slowly, read again, slower. She wrote about Dorothy, Not accusations, observations, patterns. She asks questions before she earns answers. She watches before she speaks. That is not curiosity. That is preparation. My throat tightened.
Because every word was true. Shannon, I exhaled, my voice breaking in the empty room, and tears welled up in my eyes. My dearest, I miss you so much. I love you so much. Why did you abandon me? The letter continued. Names, dates, a past property dispute Dorothy had been involved in, quietly settled, carefully buried. Shannon had found it. While she was sick, while I was trying to hold her together, she had been protecting us. Tears blurred the ink. I wiped them away angrily. I need to pull myself together and not let it get me down. I needed clarity. I may be wrong, she wrote, but if I am not, you must be ready before she moves. Ready. She had known I wouldn't act on instinct. I never had. I needed proof. She left me the beginning of it. At the bottom, her final words. You fix broken things, Christopher, but some things aren't broken yet. They are just going wrong. Protect what we built. I pressed the letter to my chest, and for the first time in 8 years, I allowed myself to cry. Not from grief, from gratitude. You didn't leave me alone, I whispered. That night, I stopped being a man who repaired shoes and became a man preparing for war. I picked up the phone. Robert, I said, when my lawyer answered, I need to update everything. A pause. Everything? He asked. Yes. Then another call. Marcus Webb? The voice answered. I need someone who finds things people try to hide. Silence. Then, you've called the right man. I happen to be just that kind of person, and many people say I'm not a bad detective. I looked at the boots one last time, closed the heel, sealed the secret again, because now I understood something that changed everything. Shannon hadn't left me a warning. She had left me a weapon. If you've ever discovered the truth too late, then you already know why I refused to make that mistake. War doesn't always begin with a gunshot. Sometimes it begins with a notebook. I bought mine the next morning. Dark green, hardcover, no lines, clean, like the truth I was about to start writing. April 14. Dorothy asked about insurance again. Thomas avoided eye contact. That was the first entry. There were dozens after that. Write everything, Robert told me across his desk. Dates, words, patterns. Courts don't trust feelings, Christopher. They trust records. I don't deal in feelings, I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Everyone does, he replied quietly. Some just hide it better. Marcus was different. He didn't talk much, didn't need to. She's careful, he said after the first week. No obvious mistakes. I answered, everyone makes one. He gave a small nod. We wait for it. So we did. And waiting is its own kind of violence. Dorothy never pushed. She suggested, adjusted, reframed. She mentioned she seemed controlling, said Thomas one evening, his voice uncertain. About the shop. Did she? I asked calmly. She just thinks it might be hard for us to build something of our own if I'm always here. Always here. Like loyalty was a flaw. I wrote it down that night. Every word, every hesitation in his voice. because something worse than greed was happening. She wasn't taking from me. She was reshaping him. Weeks later, Marcus brought the first crack.
She met with a real estate attorney, he said, sliding photos across the table. 3 times, off-record locations. My jaw tightened. About the shop? Your shop. Then came the call. Recorded. Cold. Precise. He's 67, on blood pressure medication. We need to be realistic about timing. Timing. I didn't react, didn't shout, didn't break. I wrote. Because this wasn't about anger anymore. It was about control. And then, Thomas said something that nearly destroyed me. "I don't know what I think anymore, Dad." That wasn't confusion. That was erosion. I looked at him across the table. Really looked. Past the doubt. Past the influence. "Then don't think tonight," I said quietly. "Just trust me." A long silence. "Is this about Dorothy?" he asked. "Give me 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prove everything, or lose him completely." That night, I sat alone in the shop, listening to the silence between the ticking of an old wall clock. Because here's the truth no one tells you. The most dangerous battles are the ones where the person you're trying to save doesn't know they're under attack. If you've ever watched someone you love slowly become a stranger, you already know why I couldn't afford to lose this war. If you've ever sat across from someone who was about to lose everything and didn't know it yet, you already understand how quiet that kind of night can be. Dorothy arrived first. Perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect illusion. "Christopher," she said warmly, "this feels important." "It is," I replied. Thomas didn't speak. He just watched me, waiting. I placed the boots on the table. Shannon's boots. Dorothy's eyes flickered. Interest, recognition, calculation. "All this for a pair of shoes?" she asked lightly. "No," I said, "for what's inside them." The heel clicked open. That sound, small, precise, cut through the room like a blade. I laid out the letter, then the documents, then the recordings. "You've been planning the sale of my shop, monitoring my health, accessing private files." Her smile held, barely. "You're misunderstanding." "Don't," Thomas said. One word. Enough. Silence collapsed over the table. Dorothy looked at him, really looked for the first time, and realized she had lost him. "I did this for us," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You did this for yourself." She left without finishing her wine, without looking back. Thomas sat there, hands shaking. "How long?" he asked. 18 months. His eyes closed. I almost believed her. "You trusted her," I said. "That's different." Weeks later, he stood beside me in the shop again, awkward, quiet, present. "Show me," he said. "Teach me your craft. I want to carry on your work for all of us, and in memory of my beloved mother, whose spirit is always with us, always protecting us from harm." So I did, because some things break so they can finally be seen clearly, and some legacies survive because someone chose to protect them. If this story stayed with you, ask yourself one question. Would you have seen the truth in time?
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.